Hi, folks. With Tassos today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about Biden's that ridiculous piece of theatre, Biden doing the State of the Union address. I mean, what a nonsense that was. I don't. Did he even address once the real concerns of the American people? I mean, fuck you. The way it went on, you'd think that the primary concern of the American people was transgender pronouns or abortions or something like that. I don't know. Was anything important even addressed or mentioned or alluded to? So I want to talk about the State of the Union address, but also talk about what I perceived, and Tucker Carlson mentioned this as well, that the deep state's already sort of making noises and indications of what it's going to do to stay in power. Now, for the deep state, they have to stay in power in order to implement the globalist project. In order to stay in power, they have to neutralize the effect of representative democracy. Now, whether that representative democracy is done in a Republican format or done in a direct ballot format, it doesn't matter. It's still the will of the people expressed through voting. And it's that the deep state has to neutralize, and which they have, by the way, successfully neutralized pretty much all over the world because of the safeguards to support democracy and the will of the people and the voting, and because of the safeguards in the United States. It's been a little bit harder to undermine the American democracy, but gee, they've done it, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Whereas in other places like Australia or Britain, it's been far easier to do. It was never assumed that there would be a fifth column within the Western democracies, being Britain being the cradle of, if you like, or the launching pad of modern representative democracy. But the globalists. I mean, just think about this. I'll give you some examples here. The current Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak. I mean, not only is he an Indian with an American citizenship, fuck, but they've installed him as the British Prime Minister. Just installed him. He wasn't voted for by the people or by the party or by the members of parliament. He was just installed by the globalists. The deep state just installed him as the prime minister, and he's a flunky stooge that does their bidding, and as indeed are the other leading thing, Jeremy Hunt and those sort of people. They're just flunkies doing the deep state. They might as well just be clerks or just administration flunkies for the deep state machine. But if you don't do what the deep state wants, even Australia, there was a prime minister who was going along with some of the globalist program, the World Economic Forum program, but he was very concerned about the increases in the cost of living, how it was affecting the citizens of Australia that had voted him in to be the prime minister, by the way. And he was concerned about that and didn't like doing the things that would cause financial hardship to the citizenry. Also, he was only modestly on board with the Green New Deal. He wanted to do things like planting more trees and more greening of the environment than he did wanting to push up the cost of electricity. So the globalists were still getting a fair bit of what they wanted. The migration, he wanted a bigger emphasis on skilled migration rather than mass migration. And so again, even though the globalists were still getting a fair bit of what they wanted, he wasn't their flunky stooge boy. And one thing the globalists demand now is, no, you work for us, buddy. Don't think you get to make any decisions. We fucking decide what's happening. You can pretend to the people, sure, that they're voting for you. Sure, you do that piece of theatre, but you work for us, and don't you fucking forget it. And just because he was dragging his feet on what they thought was dragging his feet on it, they just got rid of him. They just went to his colleagues and said, look, get rid of this guy. This is the guy we want you to put in as prime minister. And that was it. I mean, he was gone. And they then even organised a secondary campaign to make sure he was kicked out of the parliament so he wouldn't be a threat anymore. I mean, this is mind-boggling stuff. So we need to understand that the voting through will of the people is a direct threat to the globalist agenda, and they will neutralise it wherever they find it. Now, we should also sort of be realistic about this, that free and fair, clean elections, the will of the people, are really a fairly recent phenomenon. You don't really see it much. Probably the 1890s, you start to really see the will of the people being expressed. The voting in, like in Britain, it would be the sort of Benjamin Disraeli, William Gladstone, Herbert Asquith, David Lloyd George. These were the sort of people that were the earlier manifestations of the will of the people being expressed. And the franchise wasn't universal at the time. It was, say, 3/4 of adult men and about 10% of adult women were getting the vote. This was sort of late 1880s in Britain, for example. Universal franchise has to come later. So since universal franchise has been in, which is the mid 1920s, I guess. There were places like New Zealand that had universal franchise, and this is dressed up today as being, oh, look how progressive they were. But it wasn't that at all. They realised if they're going to give the Maori the vote, and they only gave white men the vote, that the Maoris would be in the majority. So they, we better give women the vote, so white people would then be in the majority, which is what they did, of course. And that's why they gave women the vote back then, not because of any high-minded socially progressive views. Now, really, the death knell of modern vote, or the will of the people expressed through the ballot box, the death knell of that really was universal franchise. The trade-off that was made when universal franchise came in is that we're going to ask the people to lay down their lives for us in mass mobilisation warfare. That was presumed to be the warfare of the day and of the future. We're going to, we're threatened ideologically, we're threatened by communism, the Soviet Union and that sort of thing. So we need to make a contract with the people. So we'll give you the vote, provided you agree to lay your lives down for the state, for the rich elite, really, for the state. And, mothers, you agree to give your sons to the death tolls on the battlefield, and you agree to work in factories, women. And so that was the contract, the social contract that was made then. But then, by the 1980s, it was quite clear, or even earlier than that, it was quite clear that the two things were clear. One, that mass warfare probably would not be the future. It's going to be nuclear warfare. And of course, in our current day, things like drones, remote control drones, that sort of stuff. So the whole idea of mass mobilization of all people, all resources, that's not really the warfare of the future. It's not viewed as such. It could still be, because the Chinese, if you like, the advantage the Chinese have is being able to put gazillions of boots on the ground, whether they do that efficiently, effectively, or they're just leading lambs to the slaughter and so on. But the Korean War, bear in mind, this was 70 years ago. So the Korean War showed that the Chinese are quite prepared to engage, sustain mass casualties in just charging down machine gun nests and things like that. So boots on the ground could still play a role, given that the Chinese can mobilize such vast numbers, and that they're prepared, or in theory at least, they're all prepared to sacrifice themselves in sort of mass suicidal frontal assaults, things like that. Now, that's one thing. So that was the contract at the time. So we'll give you universal franchise, but you have to agree to lay your life down. Mothers give up your sons. Women work in factories. That was the thing. That's now not. That social contract was made then. So the elites no longer need the people, and it's no longer how things are going to play out in terms of mass mobilization for warfare. So the elites say, well, we don't have to honor this contract anymore. We wanted this from you, but we now don't need this from you. And we gave you the universal franchise. Everyone can vote. We gave that to you because the trade-off was going to lay your life down, even as recently as the Vietnam War 50 years ago. That was... if you're 18 years old and you're going to lay your life down in the war, we should give you the vote, which they should, by the way. If you're being drafted to give up your life, then you should have the fucking vote. no question of that. So anyway, they have this contract is no longer valid. So the elites, well, why do we have to give you the gift of universal franchise and then do what you say through the ballot box? Why do we have to do that when we no longer need your sacrifice? So that's where that's gone. This has now gone even further with the globalist project, is that we no longer need your approval, we no longer need your agreement, we no longer need any of that. You just do what the fuck we tell you, and therefore the ballot box just gets in the way. Now, when you look at the things like, say, and I'll come to the globalists are they interested in fixing roads and infrastructure? Are they interested in fixing health services? Are they interested in doing the things that the people want? No, they're constantly trying to divide us through gender conflict, conflict over transgender pronouns, over abortions. They invent these phantoms of neo-Nazis who are supposed to be everywhere, and racists and fascists, and It's all invented issues, while none of the real issues are being addressed. So the lawfare against Trump has failed. He's probably their biggest threat internationally. Well, not probably, he is their biggest threat as they would see it, because Trump will give power back to the people, and that the globalists will not tolerate under any circumstances. So they have to stop Trump. They've tried lawfare. They've tried demonization in the media, the lies, the propaganda, because they control the media machine, and nothing's having its effect, which is annoying, irritating, and outraging them. So they come out with phrases like anyone that votes for Trump it must be a Nazi. It just goes on and on. And so they're rigging the election is, and I think these are the signals they're giving out. Rigging the election is the only card they've got left. How they'll play it exactly and how they'll spin it, that's another matter. There's one even more drastic card they have left, but obviously they don't really want to take that step if they can avoid it. But I don't think it's off the table. The book depository and all this, I don't think it's completely off the table, but they hesitate. It is a drastic step, and they'd rather not do it. But they are determined to cling on to power. So their options are to rig the election, or to already have all the mechanisms in place to absolutely neutralize Trump's presidency if he wins, which is why Trump's going to need some really sharp people on board who are going to sort of see that coming and take steps to counter it. And Trump must get the sharp people on board to do that, must do it. Any slow start, any sort of fumbling, well-meaning guy like a Jeff Sessions or something, he's screwed. The presidency is fucked. They have to they have to come out of the gate storming if they're going to make the presidency a success and turn back the tide of this unrepresentative globalization. Now, how are they going to do the vote rigging? Let's have a look at the 2020 election. I've done the mathematics on this, and I've got a lot of sort of background in statistics. So when we all went to bed when the polling booths closed or the counting stopped on the day of the presidential election in 2020, if you extrapolate out the mathematics, Trump was between 13 and 14 million votes ahead, assuming you extrapolate out the full count. So he's ahead by a long way. That's landslide type victory stuff. By the end of the following day, Trump was 8 million votes behind. So somewhere in that 24 to 36 hour period, they managed to find in the order of 22 million votes for Biden and almost none for Trump. So you don't get those sort of results. That's an absolute clear indication that it was not only rigged, but horribly rigged to the tune of that they manufactured 20 million plus votes and just pulled it out of their ass. So they're going to try something like that again, is my take. But that's the State of the Union, nothing on how they're going to make American lives better, and everything about how they're going to further the globalist project, and how I believe they've already decided they're going to have to rig the election. You've been with Tassus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.